In looking at histories of orchestras, the documented first African-American player was in 1946. Rosemary was 1940. You may have a historical piece here.
To know that there was an African-American female musician playing in an orchestra for years, but being hidden.
She studied in Chicago. She auditioned for the symphony in 1940 and got in. As the only black player, they put her in the back second violin section last year, but did not put her name in the program for 15 years. If you look at her history, it's amazing. Her mother worked for the Oliver family, which was at that point one of the richest families in town. Gertrude Oliver, the daughter, took a liking to her and gave her piano lessons and gave her violin lessons. So I went and found her obituary because she died in 2017. And in the obituary were her two children's names listed. So I went to Facebook and I put in her son's name. He wrote back and he said he was Rosemary's son, that his sister had all the material. He would get me in touch with her. Eventually, her and I started to correspond with each other.
Mr. Cunningham would just let her go all through the mansion. She could go in any room. She could go up in the den and play the piano, and I think that's where the music really started to really become part of her. Gertrude had a violin, and she brought her violin out because she used to play it in the mansion. And my mother would listen to her and watch her play. And she said to Mrs. Cunningham, "I want to play that." And she said, "Well, all right." And I would imagine it wasn't long after that she offered to give her the Stradivarius violin.
Everyone knows Stradivari. If you don't know much about violins or classical music, most people know Stradivari. All I can say is it's an earned reputation.
I really think that Miss Gertrude Cunningham, because of her heart of gold, wanted to do something for my mother Rosemary that would really be huge and big, to try to replace some of the rejection, coming to South Bend with TB and having to be in a sanitarium for a year, and all of these things that she experienced. And I really truly believe that was her capacity to love, why she did that.
So, when your mom joined the symphony in 1940, what was her feeling about being the only black person in there?
Well, you know, as you can see, her being almost out of sight, hiding in the background, felt a sense of rejection. And I was always wondering, you know, how long do you experience that before you become so used to it?
Mm. And as I began to research, I decided to look at when were the first African Americans in symphonies. Cleveland, Boston, Philadelphia, New York, and Chicago. But through other orchestras until I got to Chicago and discovered that their first African American player was the year 2002, which totally floored me. A young guy named Tiger Larson. And I thought, this is my hometown. Never dawned on me that nobody of my color was sitting up in there. Why are we not in symphony orchestras?
After the audition, I was sitting in Meister Barenboim's office, and he congratulated me on winning the job. welcoming me to the family, to the orchestra. And he said, you know, I have to mention this because it's significant that you're the first African-American in the Chicago Symphony. And honestly, I don't even know how I felt about it. I just felt like, oh, okay. I mean, it didn't, I was just so happy I got the job. You know, that I was the first and I could be an inspiration to other people. That's fantastic. It's just wonderful.
In her time, orchestras probably were at 1%. And now, 80 years later, orchestras are barely at 2%.
There was one situation where I had invited a guest. We were sitting in the box. So as my guests approached the door, they were questioned by someone else who was in the box if they were supposed to be there. The person continues to ask if they're in the right space. By this time, I have now come in and I am now intercepting. They are with me and they are exactly where we are supposed to be.
I got the vote of every person on the committee from behind the screen. Every person, the most famous players in the world gave me their vote. 2-3 weeks go by, and both orchestras are in New York playing at Carnegie Hall Festival. We're both staying at the Wellington Hotel together. And who's standing all around? Half the Chicago Symphony, when they said, oh, there's Earl Madison. How are you doing, guys? What's going on? They said, did you hear? Did I hear what? He says, you won that audition. I said, well, if I won an audition, where's my contract? They said, didn't you hear? The board of directors heard they had that Montanone wanted to hire a Negro, and they said, no, you can't hire a Negro because we don't want that kind of image in our orchestra. They got together, the board of directors, and had a vote about whether they would hire their first Negro, and they said they had a vote twice, and you lost the vote by 1 vote.
No one could understand why Josh Jones, principal percussionist of the Calgary Philharmonic and the Grant Park Festival Orchestra and the Kansas City Symphony, was fired for playing a crash cymbal too softly. Although it's been a year since this has happened, this feeling is still visceral because of how wrong it was. Knowing that people intentionally lied about my work, about what I love about this business, it still hurts.
I think every time we get a different version of the exclusion that has been part of our field, it causes somebody to learn something new or see something current in a different way.
I read about a foundation that provided funds to support violinists. And I tried for 2 years to get an appointment with the person who was chair of the board. Finally, I got the appointment. I go to see him. I walked in to his office. We shook hands, and as I'm lowering myself to my seat, he looks at me and he says, I had no idea you were black. And my initial response was, of course, anger. I'm like, what the hell? What? But my dad had taught us, when someone says something to you that knocks you off your feet, that is unexpected, don't respond right away. Just take a deep breath. So I just decided to listen. Then he went on, he said, you know, my wife and I have been going to the Aspen Music Festival for more than 30 years. We rarely see any black violinists. Why is that? So we had this really engaging conversation. I was able to tell him about a young black violinist who had come to Texas, and I got the money I was looking for.
The best weapon you have against prejudice, the best weapon you have against the lack of representation, against any of the social circumstances you will encounter, is to be the best violinist in any of those rooms you walk into.
If I could meet Rosemary Sanders, I would tell her how much it means to me that she stayed. That she stayed on stage in spite of all the things that she went through. And I would give her a big hug.
That's the most inspiring thing about Rosemary, that she wasn't limited. The 30s was limiting for everybody, but she wasn't limited by it. She broke through so many barriers and glass ceilings that most of us can't even comprehend today. We're still having trouble breaking through the glass ceilings and barriers that she broke through in the 1930s. What does that say? Is that an indictment on us and our time now? Or does that speak to a testament of how forward-thinking and progressive she was?